Urban legends have always been popular. Typically, they're just a good bit of fun spread around by ordinary people in hopes of giving each other a good scare, teach some sort of moral lesson, or keep people away from a specific location. Legends based around Bloody Mary, the Mothman, and most recently, Slender Man, just to name a few. All cultures have their own to tell, and in New York, things aren't so different. Stories of a supposed killer named Cropsey began coming around in the 1970s, specifically in the Staten Island area, or keep people away from a specific location. Legends based around Bloody Mary, the Mothman, and most recently, Slender Man, just to name a few. All cultures have their own to tell, and in New York, things aren't so different. Stories of a supposed killer named Cropsey began coming around in the 1970s, specifically in the Staten Island area. A tragic legend, one describing a man who, after the death of his son, escaped a mental health hospital and kidnapped several young children. And he had a hook for a hand. Some stories describe the figure as having scars from burns, others isolated his crimes to Staten Island, while occasionally, accounts of his crimes were told around the state. Parents effectively prevented their children from getting into trouble by telling them these stories, scaring them from straying too far from home or staying out too late. Cropsey was also a major fascination at summer camps, with several reports of the figure rearing his head at these locations being passed around. Counselors would often use stories of the killer not only to give their kids a classic campfire story, but also to teach them the importance of being safe around a fire. But in the 1980s, the story of Cropsey took a terrifying turn when children and young adults actually began disappearing around Staten Island. In 1966, Andre Rand became a custodian at the now infamous Willowbrook State School. The facility was for children with mental disabilities and sat on the 385-acre Willowbrook campus, where a former tuberculosis sanitarium was also located. Andre lived and worked at the facility until 1968, acting as an orderly and physical therapist during his time there. After the school's closure in 1987, he reportedly began camping out in the woods surrounding Willowbrook. He was born Frank Russian on March 11, 1944, in Manhattan and grew up in Ithaca, New York. Although not much is known about Andre's childhood, it is known that his father died when he was only 14, and his mother spent some time in a mental institution. According to Andre's sister, who remained anonymous until she agreed to be interviewed for the documentary Cropsey, their mother had emotional problems, causing her to spend time at Pilgrim State Hospital in Brentwood, New York. Andre's sister also stated that neither she nor Andre were ever abused by either of their parents. Andre was arrested for the first time in 1969 when he was 15 years old, for the kidnapping and attempted rape of a 9-year-old girl in the South Bronx. Police discovered Andre and the girl in his car, which was parked in a vacant lot. Andre was charged with attempted rape but eventually pleaded guilty to sexual abuse in 1970, in order to receive a lighter sentence. He served only 16 months in prison before being paroled in 1972. Some speculate he may have been involved in the disappearance of another young girl shortly after his release. On January 9, 1983, Andre picked up 11 kids in a school bus. The children were at the Staten Island YMCA when Andre appeared. Rather than returning them to their homes, he kidnapped them for 5 hours. He took them to get burgers at White Castle before heading to the Newark airport to watch planes land and depart. He was charged with unlawful imprisonment but only spent 10 months in prison, since none of the children were harmed. On July 9, 1987, 12-year-old Jennifer Schweiger's parents reported her missing. She had Down syndrome and had left her home on what was supposed to be a short walk. Andre was arrested on charges of kidnapping her nearly a month later on August 4 and was placed under a 30-day psychiatric evaluation. He was claiming he had never met the girl, which contradicted the statements by numerous witnesses, and changed his entire story once his defense lawyer heard about these individual accounts. Just days later, Jennifer's body was found buried in a shallow grave on Willowbrook's grounds. One of Andre's makeshift campsites was just 150 feet away. At this time, that he was charged with first-degree murder. According to some of Andre's fellow inmates, he bragged about his similarities to serial killer Ted Bundy. He is even claimed to have said, "You know, me and Ted Bundy are alike in many ways. We both used Volkswagens. Bundy's thing was women. My thing is kids." Do you think the police could figure that out? Andre's defense attorney, Dwayne Felton, later described these statements as nothing more than pretentious prison boasting. Despite witness testimony that Andre was seen holding hands with Jennifer the day she disappeared, the jury was unable to reach a verdict on the first-degree murder charge. They did, however, find him guilty of kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment, which earned him a sentence of 25 years to life. Andre was sentenced in 1989 and would have been eligible for parole in 2008 had he not been charged for another kidnapping decades later. In 2002, kidnapping charges were brought against Andre in relation to the 1981 disappearance of another young girl. Holly Ann Hughes was a 7-year-old Staten Island resident who had last been seen purchasing a bar of soap at a local store on July 15. Although witnesses had seen Andre's Volkswagen driving around the area, there hadn't been enough evidence to charge him with kidnapping Holly, whose body was never found. Police reinvestigated the case in 1998 and eventually had enough evidence to charge Andre, who was found guilty of kidnapping Holly and was sentenced to another 25 years to life in 2004. There are 3 other unsolved missing person cases that Andre Rand is believed to be involved in. The first occurred in July 10, 1972 when 5-year-old Alice Pereira went missing from her Staten Island apartment building southeast of Willowbrook. Andre had just been released from prison and was working as a painter in the apartment building when Alice disappeared. Although Andre was questioned by police, he was released due to lack of evidence. On August 14, 1983, 10-year-old Tyahese Jackson went missing after leaving the Mariners Harbor Motel on Staten Island. 12 days earlier, Andre had been released from prison after completing his sentence for the school bus kidnapping. As with Alice Pereira, he was questioned by authorities, but there was not enough evidence to press charges. The third case in which Andre is a suspect is that of Hank Gafforio. Hank was a mentally disabled 22-year-old man who was last seen with Andre. The two ate at a diner together in 1984. But Hank was never seen again. Andre is still alive and is eligible for parole in 2037 when he is 93 years old. He is considered to be the most notorious criminal Staten Island has ever known. This designation is largely due to the horrid nature of his criminality. In 2009, Andre's story and the surrounding urban legend became the subjects of the documentary Cropsey. The filmmakers, Joshua Zaman and Barbara Brancaccio, both grew up on Staten Island. They have memories of hearing about Cropsey in the 80s and steering clear of the woods surrounding the old Seaview Hospital and Willowbrook. Joshua and Barbara interviewed a number of people in the film, including Andre's sister and several retired detectives. They discussed the phenomena of how a story they thought was urban legend was both a precursor and an afterthought to a true tale of terror in their own backyards. In November 2001, Andre sent paper a batch of mail, some of which dated back to 1994. Sent while he was awaiting trial in the Holly and Hughes case, Andre cast himself as a scapegoat victim of a corrupt legal system. These were just as precisely written and drafted so neatly that it seemed a ruler had lent him a hand. The letters included thorough arguments against the nuclear arms race, nostalgic memories of racing hot rods as a child, and emotional pleas to develop a kind correspondence with an old man for friendship. He also included a sketch of a small airplane and the interior control panel. On Mother's Day 2011, Andre sent an unsettling handwritten note to a local newspaper. In the letter, then a 67-year-old Andre wished all the ladies on Staten Island who supported prosecutorial vindictiveness against an innocent person a happy Mother's Day. This was his letter. Should I become a millionaire, it would be my true nature to grant all of you with each an envelope full of seeds, to plant and cultivate a rosebush shrub that produces roses every season as a token of my heartfelt forgiveness, year after year, rather than bouquets of rosebuds which blossoms and shortly dies out, wrote the drifter and one-time handyman. It is only a tiny rosebud, a flower of God's design, but I cannot unfold the petals with these clumsy hands of mine. The secret of unfolding flowers is not known to such as I the flower, only that the Spirit of God opens. In my hands would fade and die. If I cannot unfold a rosebud, flowers of God's creation, then, how can I think I have the wisdom to unfold this life of mine? For the pathway that lies before me my Heavenly Father knows, I'll trust Him in faith to unfold the future, like He unfolds the rose. Andre said the 188-word letter is my Mother's Day gift to the ladies there. Okay, guys, this was the end of the story. If you enjoy it, please subscribe to the channel.